No, this is always fun.
I like your backdrop. That's a real live backdrop as well, isn't it?
Okay, well, Ben, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the Iowa Business Council's Iowa BizCast. This webinar web series is really designed to interview Iowa Business Council members and share all of the great things that they're doing, not only in business, but what they're doing for Iowa, what they're doing for the people of Iowa. A number of Iowa Business Council members, member companies are traded on Wall Street, but every single Iowa Business Council member is concerned about Iowa Main Street, and that's certainly true here with Ruan Transportation. And so we're excited to welcome Ben McLean to the webcast series. Ben is a longtime member of the Iowa Business Council, a former chairman of the Iowa Business Council, and previous to that, he also served as a deputy member of the IBC. He's been the CEO for many years at Ruan. Previously was the chief information officer and the chief operating officer. So Ben, thanks so much for joining us and welcome to the
Thank you.
BizCast.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, Ben, let's start off with just a quick introduction of Ruan and specifically the founding story of your company some 90 years ago, more than 90 years ago.
Absolutely. It's a really great story, and it is one that we like to retell, especially inside our four walls with our team members, because it still shapes the company that we are today. And there's a lot of lessons about the values that we hold that are foundational from that very first day that our company began. And so you're right. It was 1932. Prior to that, our founder, John Ruan Sr., was a student at Iowa State University. He was in his freshman year there. His father was a doctor. So even in this would have been Great Depression era, but even during that period, the company had the finances and the ability to send him to Iowa State. But really, a couple of events happened that caused a significant turn for the worse and tragedy in their family. One, the stock market crash did essentially wipe out the family's savings. And then John Ruan Sr.'s father, the doctor, died unexpectedly, died young. And so the family was left without money. John had finished his freshman year, and his mother told him, "There's no money for you to continue your collegiate career at Iowa State." So John was already an entrepreneurial teenager at that point. He'd started a couple of businesses, before he'd gone on to college, and he had met some connections at Iowa State, and one indicated that if you can find a way to get your hands on a truck, there's a gravel haul opportunity, and you can, essentially start a new life and get your family back into a stable position if you're able to do that. So the family had a car, and he traded that car in for a truck and some debt. And on July 4, 1932, Independence Day, he drove down to Chillicothe, Iowa. There was a park there. I think the park is still there, actually, along the river. And he set up a tent with his new truck and started. Actually, that day, there was still a crew working that needed some gravel hauled for a lot of the road construction that was happening. So our company started, Ruan Transportation Management Systems, started July 4, 1932. I guess the main office would have been a tent in Chillicothe, Iowa. And our founder, really helping his family rise up from tragedy and from the loss of, all their means of income, so that he could support himself and his family. So since then, the family, and it really, in those early years, he started with the one truck. It wasn't actually that long where he got an opportunity to buy two more, bring on two drivers along with him. They moved into hauling coal in Des Moines. And then eventually, after several years, had an opportunity. And this is where some of just his entrepreneurship, ingenuity came in. And it was a company called Western Grocers, who was, until that time, hauling groceries to their stores from the warehouse, still using horse. And so he thought they might be up for something a little more automated and new, and he convinced them that he could run the fleet that would haul their groceries by truck to the stores. So that was kind of one of the first main kind of dedicated fleets that was created. And then and so the company's been around since 1932. Will be 92 years this year. But through the World War, this company was very involved in the war effort. John would have been ready to go serve his country in battle, but he was asked to stay here to be part of the U.S.'s supply chain and essentially the war machine to ensure that we could win World War II and produce the things needed here to keep our country going. So there's just a really rich history of our company, but it started with just this resilience and this kind of very difficult period of tragedy for a family, and then how do you respond, and the grit and the resilience and the perseverance to build a company up. And so we're still a family business today. All of the six, third generation shareholders knew their grandfather. They knew what he stood for. They know the story. They're supportive of the same kind of culture that allows people to join our business and support their own families and make a better life for themselves. So we've, and that's why I share, we tell this story because it's still very meaningful to who we are and what we do and how we go about building our teams and the work we do in today's economy.
It's an incredible story, and we'll come back to that in a little bit because I want to spend some time and talk about some of the community efforts that you guys are involved in, and those seeds were planted back in 1932. That community service, that national public service. But let's stay along the lines of business for a moment. I think every Iowan, as you mentioned, has seen the trucks along the interstate, but Ruan is so much more than a trucking company. What can you share along the lines of logistics, supply chain management side of the company? And related to all that, how has technology, whether it's AI or driving software, GPS, contributed to the growth of the company these last 92 years?
Sure. Okay. Sure. There's a lot in there. Well, and I'll just start by saying we are absolutely a trucking company. So yes, we do more, but we are, we're very, very tied to the roots of where this company started and still what's a major part of our company. And as you shared, that is the most visible part. In a lot of cases, you'll see one or more of our 3,500 trucks, moving up and down the roadways, and we've got about 5,500 team members now, and the majority of whom are professional drivers. So, we deeply believe in the role of the professional truck driver, in the kind of the good that this part of our economy does for communities and everyone around us. And obviously, our first driver was our founder. And so we've had a long list of drivers and families that have been supported through the role of a professional truck driver. So it's a huge part of our business and a really important part. But as you've shared, over the years, you'll see our trucks, the fleets we run, they are really specialized. We call it's the dedicated part of our industry, but it's really where a customer of ours, and in many cases they have their own private fleet, but a lot of times they'll outsource that to us. But they need that fleet that's highly reliable, that is very much first and foremost focused on their supply chain, their products, their customers. They need high service. They need that reliability. They need it to be done safely. In many cases, the driver may interact with their stores, their own personnel. They may interact even more so with their customers. And so the role of that fleet is very integral to how they deliver their product and service. And so that's really where our fleets run. But what's happened from that, so we've built our business around being really this trusted extension of our customers' teams. And when you do that and you run these fleets in this way, what's happened with our company over these 90 years is that many customers say, well, you are this trusted part of our team. We trust you to act in our company's best interests on our behalf. You represent us. And, we take, great pride in doing that. But then we also move all this other freight that doesn't really lend itself to a dedicated fleet. It might be a little more transient, might be surge capacity. It might come and go. And so there's really good options to do that. It just doesn't happen to be on our assets. And so we've really grown our services. I mentioned managed transportation is one of our key core service lines. That's the dedicated fleets are about half of our business. These other non-asset based services are about the other half of our company. And so managed transportation, we still are charged with moving all the freight, but we bring the sophisticated software, a lot of smart logistics engineers, the carrier relationships. So by carriers, I mean, it could be a truckload carrier that's going to move a whole trailer full of goods for us. It may be a less truckload provider, maybe rail, it may be air. And we use all the software, that we bring to the table to optimize that. So we kind of are tightly intertwined in our customer supply chains, whether it's their inbound raw materials flowing in through a warehouse, through a whole supplier base that may be US based or global, to then the finished products that come off of their production lines or go to their grocery stores. And so that managed transportation service, it's called kind of asset light or non-asset based third party logistics, is a big and growing part of our business, but it's tied into that same strategy and brand image of being a trusted extension of our customers, providing them these integrated supply chain services. So that's one. We run purpose-built warehouses for many of our customers. We call that value-added warehousing. So, well over 1 million square feet. All the reasons that products, whether they're raw materials, whether they're finished products, moving through a supply chain, need to have a stopping point, to be optimized and delivered out to a dealer network or customers. We'll run those warehouses, our personnel. We provide the square footage, all the technology required to move those goods and warehouse them. And so that's also very well integrated into the services we provide. And then the last service I'd mentioned is also highly automated. We've actually made investments as an owner into software as a service software to run our brokerage business. We call that brokerage support services. That's a little more transactional. That is a little bit more of the volatile kind of perhaps spot market freight that needs to move. But where our customers need that capacity, we go out to the market, have the carrier relationships to move that freight in that way where it does not move on our assets. So there's across every one of those services, whether it's in the cab of our trucks or whether it's this managed transportation service, it is highly technology enabled. And I joined Ruan in 2007. I'm a computer engineer by education. I joined in our IT department, and it's been, I would say that fairly back in 2007, I think our industry was a bit behind, and it wasn't an area of focus for a lot of automation, digitization, and some of the other things that have now come into our industry. But starting with, things with GPS tracking and kind of location-based services, those kind of things existed, I'd say, in 2007, and were being used by some industry participants at varying levels. You start to go back in 2007, I don't think the term smartphone existed. We didn't have mobile apps. I think the iPhone was released in 2007. And yet even back then, we were building, before the term mobile app existed, we were building mobile apps. They had these old Nextel phones with a Java virtual machine on them. We'd write the code to communicate with drivers, send them their next load detail, get the information back. But happily, there's been a lot more technology advancement, and we can now use these, smartphones, mobile apps, tablets to further digitize the supply chain, whether it's in our trucks or with the carriers that we use. From a technology standpoint that you asked about, the safety side has undergone, similar, very, very positive evolutionary changes. Things with, and you'll see these on passenger cars, but the collision avoidance that I would suggest if you are buying a new car, that would be a feature that if it's not standard, that you get that on your vehicle. And I would share that because as we made forward-looking collision mitigation standard on our trucks probably in 2015, 2016 timeframe, and we looked across the first 300 million miles about how that technology, what kind of difference that made. And this is, and so just for clarity, this is the forward-looking radar. It's going to look out in front of the vehicle and it's going to assess what's in front. Is there an impending collision, or is there, a shrinking following distance that the driver needs to be concerned about? And then ultimately, if it feels the driver's not reacting, it's going to automatically brake the truck up to 100% braking power. And so as we installed that and measured this first 300 million miles, we saw the rear end frequencies of collisions where we were the rear ending vehicle decreased by over 50%. Wow. So I can absolutely share that the technology that's out there and the further autonomous features that we've continued to add have made the roadway safer. We absolutely see it. We've seen how it can help our drivers be better drivers. Human system is not perfect, so it's really been a great aid. And it may only be, I tell drivers, you may need this for 3 seconds in your entire career. But if you do end up needing it, and you may not, but if you do, it's going to be there and it will change your life and the life of those around you on the roadway. So a lot of good work with technology there. There's a lot with robotic process automation. We've been doing a whole lot to automate the back office, remove mundane tasks. And that starts to get into the AI world. There's more to come there, but what's exciting is all of this technology has great direct application to what we do in our industry. Our customers are more and more interested, so it's driving that innovation and that evolution. And when having joined Ruan in IT and gotten to see all of this technology be applied, when we apply it, it's very rewarding because it's very visible. Everything in our industry, it's physical. You're moving freight, you can see it, and it's really rewarding to see the adoption of that technology in a very visible way in our industry.
That's fascinating. And to your point, this is changing so rapidly, the changes that have gone on since 2007, since you first joined the IT department. When you think out into the horizon, what are some of the technology aspects or different aspects that you're seeing or that you hope to see that will provide a positive impact for your company?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a couple topics that I'm very frequently asked about, almost without fail, in every discussion like this, and it's always electrification or alternate fuels and automation. And we certainly have stayed close. I mean, over all of our years in Ruan, to be close to that cutting edge of where is the industry going, how are we improving the safety, the reliability, the efficiency, the cleanliness of our industry. And as you look even on the emissions and the fuel side and electrification, as you look at our industry, if you go back to 1988, and you would take the emissions out of a single truck in 1988, we've reduced the industry, and I shouldn't take credit for it, but the industry and the OEMs have reduced emissions coming out of heavy duty trucks by 98%. So you think about NOx, the nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, a 98% reduction since 1988. So over that time period, what one truck used to emit, it now takes 60 trucks equivalent today. So there's been good progress in our industry. And obviously now the big focus on CO2 that wasn't really there 10 or 15 years ago. And so new interest in how we limit emissions coming out of the vehicles that move our supply chains and support, the quality of life in this country and many, many others. And so right now, a lot of the key discussion, research, innovation is happening around alternative fuels. From our standpoint, when we've tested electric trucks, we were one of the first to put in some of the reservations with some of the electric OEMs out there. And so we've watched the feasibility of the battery electric opportunity evolve. And honestly, before that, there was a period of, maybe 15 years ago where natural gas was going to be, the next major fuel for both cars and for heavy duty vehicles. And we were in on the very early end of that, testing renewable natural gas fleets. And so burning natural gas in our Class 8 vehicles. So we've stayed close to all of the alternative vehicles. I think right now, what we want to ensure is that having tested and seen the limits of current technology related to EVs, that we keep all opportunities for alternative fuels and emissions reductions on the table. I sit on the board of the American Transportation Research Institute. They have recent research out that really, looks to widen the scope of assessment on alternative fuels, and one is specifically on electrification and battery electric vehicles. When you look at the entire supply chain necessary to produce and then recycle a battery electric vehicle, and you start to measure the carbon footprint across that whole supply chain, all the way to the mining of all of the rare metals that are required to build the batteries. And then candidly, some of what we don't know about how we're going to recycle 8 to 10,000 pound electric batteries. There's some unknown there, and there's certainly some emissions that we need to consider beyond simply what happens while the vehicle is being operated and hauling freight. And so that's where our industry and the American Transportation Research Institute is really trying to ensure that we look at the full emissions life cycle, from or the production all the way through the end of life of whatever technologies and alternative fuels that we select. Things like renewable diesel have some real interest from our industry right now, because that's a fuel that's it's renewable. It's made from feedstocks, so the carbon is sequestered in a very short lifetime in order to create those feedstocks. Then of course, when they're burned in the engine, they're re-emitted. But that's a sustainable way to sequester and then re-emit carbon, but not continue to grow it from fossil fuels. It's chemically the same as petroleum diesel, so it could fit in the existing infrastructure that we have today. And some of the research is showing that if you look at a full electrification scenario versus growing our use of renewable diesel, the carbon footprint can be compelling to look at alternatives like renewable diesel. So there are those and other opportunities out there. Natural gas, biogas is still an option. Hydrogen fuel cells. And so what we're looking at from this important aspect and element of how the world moves freight is, let's ensure that we keep all of these options on the table, because as you said, they're all still evolving and that they're at varying states of feasibility. I think currently we use several billion gallons of renewable diesel today, mostly in California because they have a low carbon fuel standard. And so they actually, they'll support with credits the delta between petroleum diesel and renewable diesel. But if you start to look at the cost of doing that versus the cost of electrifying and all the charging requirements and the need to transmit and then the need to recycle batteries and the loss of productivity with a unit that could weigh at least 10,000 pounds more and all the freight you're no longer able to move, you start to realize that we've got to keep all the options on the table. In the meantime, we're going to continue to use our electric, yard trucks and find the applications where the constraints on range of electric vehicles, don't cause a reduction in the efficiency and the ability to actually make a supply chain work. So we want to stay involved in all of it. But as we work with regulators and OEMs and the innovators, we want to ensure we keep all the options on the table for sustainability of the transportation world. So that's one that certainly there's a whole lot going on, and it's fascinating. There's a lot to learn. I continue to learn a whole lot about what's coming and what's possible. And then I'm always asked about autonomous trucks, and will we have driverless cars, trucks? And from where we are, I think we're not placing bets on one outcome or the other. What I would say is that, and I just gave this collision avoidance example, and so where we've placed further tools and capabilities into the truck to assist a driver, we've made dramatic improvements in safety on the roadways. And so our view for any of these features is really, what's the best way we can move towards this aspirational goal of zero accidents on the roadways. So we've taken that as kind of our goal and belief that that should be our aspiration. We already built the brand of our fleets around being this safest, highest service, most professional fleet there is. And that's our aspirational goal there. And so hand in hand with that, our goal is to find a way to eliminate accidents on the roadways. The view right now is certainly give the driver all the tools that they could possibly have to avoid that. Use these autonomous tools and technologies to drive towards zero. I believe someone else is probably going to answer the question of whether a driver ever comes out of a car or a truck. It's a societal question. I look at our industry and I still say we're many, many years behind the aviation industry. They've been doing automation and autopilot for many, many years, more than our industry has. And yet, if you ever get on a flight, which I'm sure you do, you'll notice, I think we always have two pilots in the plane. So I've had some interesting dialogues with folks about what are the real differences between aviation and operating, a very safety sensitive 80,000 pound tractor trailer on the roadways. And will we not somehow move in tandem, or certainly not move counter to what aviation has done? I think that's a societal question that'll be answered, but I also can't help but think there's going to be one voice in the room that says, give the driver everything they could possibly have in terms of technology. And until the day where technology just never fails, ensure that driver is there to cover all of those boundary cases where you need that person there. So we'll see where it goes. We'll be ready either way, but we truly and very deeply believe in the role of the professional driver in this industry. And so we're obviously there to support them, now and far, far, far into the future. And I think pretty deeply that that's what we'll see.
Yeah, that's a great example of sort of all encompassing all tools available, thinking rationally and clearly on where the industry might go. But one thing's for certain, you're dependent upon people now and into the future. And so as we think about that next generation of workforce, Ruan has been among Iowa's leading companies on work-based learning experiences, specifically registered apprenticeship programs. So a two-part question: why is this such an important part of your workforce strategy? And what would you say to a young person in Iowa right now, hopefully listening, to pursue a career in this area, in this industry?
Sure. Well, the people are, just people make this industry run, and there's no doubt about it. We put millions and millions of dollars into all the hard assets and the rolling assets, tractors and trailers, but the people of Ruan and those across this industry, really make it happen. And so from a people standpoint, and we had a leader summit last year, and I was really fulfilled to dig back into all the archives. And so our founder did write a company newsletter for many, many years, and to go and read the stories of how he talked and thought and felt about people and what they did in this business, what they meant to this family business. There is something that's been part of our culture for a long time. I remember quoting to our people something he'd written, and you've heard the story. This is someone who built this company from nothing, from day one, from load one, sleeping in a tent. And in many ways, the business was him. He was. Sorry, Joe. I'm just getting I don't know how to turn off my phone. I should have figured that out. But he was this business, right? And so he I'm really sorry about that. I don't know why that's happening. He was this business, and he went from there to a point in a newsletter, it was probably in the 80s, where he basically said, everything this company's done, everything we've built together has happened because of all of you.
Yeah.
And Ruan, is your company. And so I just always kind of have taken that writing from him about what people mean to our company and our industry, and what they meant to the founder in our company, and how he thought about all of them. Joe, let me just try to turn this off for a minute. I'm really sorry about that.
That's incredible that he would write a newsletter through the 1980s. I mean, that's talk about dedication and an understanding of what got you to where you are.
Right. And so we have these great elements back into the 40s and 50s, where you got to read about what was going on in Ruan then, and it was always about the people, and honestly, it was about them and their families, and so that's just always been a part of our culture as well. And so to your question about our industry, recruiting people into our industry, or why supply chain and transportation is an important, valuable career to consider. One, we have a very recent example of going through the pandemic and understanding what supply chains mean to this world. I think that you would have seen, a rising interest in supply chain before we went into the pandemic, but that interest and the knowledge and the value really only, in my view, accelerated in terms of the true understanding of what well-running supply chains mean to our economy, to our way of life. And that's the thing I'd say is, I wouldn't call our industry a super high glamorous one, right? But I've worked with some of the smartest, hardworking, best people you'll see anywhere, and you'll find anywhere. And I think all of us who get into this industry take pride in the fact that we are a part of these great supply chains. We don't exist without great businesses that we can support. But when we have that relationship and we're able to build it, we get to play a part in the supply chains that make our quality of life possible. Trucks move 70% of the freight by weight in this country. 80% of all the communities in the U.S. receive all the goods to provide, all their goods and services by trucks. So there's all of us, I think I'm probably safely on the back half of my career. I think when folks get there, they're reflective a little bit more often about, what is all the work and time and effort that I put into my career. What was it all about? How did it serve the communities around me? How did it serve the people around me? And folks in our industry, I believe, can look back on their careers and feel very, very good about the role they've played in our economy and our way of life. And just one other quick, pandemic example. We had a call, is from one of our hospitals here during the pandemic, and it was just a person-to-person call from folks who knew each other in both organizations. But it was a thank you call, because they said, your driver just showed up and delivered this load of oxygen to our hospital. And as you can imagine, in 2020, that was a time where the movement and the use of oxygen was incredibly important for hospitals. And so as that driver and all of our folks who help enable the movement of freight like that, think about the difference that they make every day and in their careers. That's just there's a lot of things to feel very, very good about when you do the right kind of work in this industry. And I'd certainly recruit folks to take a hard look at Ruan if they're interested.
Yeah, you said it. When I think about essential industries, there's nothing more essential than what you guys are providing. And I was going to say, folks could point to hospitals and clinics and things like that, and that's certainly true, but they are only as good as the supplies that they have. And if they don't have the supplies that they need to help a person, they're not going to be able to help that person. So it all comes back to folks like you and companies like you. You mentioned recruiting people into Ruan. We spend a lot of time, to pan out a little bit, we spend a lot of our time at Iowa Business Council meetings talking about population growth strategies. So I'm curious, as you're recruiting people to Ruan who might be from out of state, when you're recruiting people into Iowa, what are some of the things that you pitch to prospective employees about the virtues of becoming an Iowan, about living in Iowa?
Sure. Well, I think the headline I would provide there is opportunity. I mean, this is a place of great opportunity for folks who want to work hard. I mean, we have this great culture in our state of some of that same grit and resilience that I think are part of our story. That exists in a lot of places and a lot of people and in our culture in Iowa. And there is that humility and that willingness to work hard. And where that exists, I mean, we obviously have great cost of living here, but we do have great opportunity. And even being in a discussion yesterday talking about, one of our challenges is population growth. And I think the statistic was given, and I believe it's accurate as we sit here now, is we have more open jobs in Iowa than we do unemployed individuals. So, people I think move a lot first for the job, and we've got great opportunities here with great companies in a state that has got a whole lot to offer. This has been a wonderful place for us to raise our family, a safe place to do it. That means a lot to us. And it's been a very accessible one. We moved here from Chicago in 2007. The idea about starting a family and managing and balancing a career was key in that decision, and we've never looked back. It's been a wonderful place for us, and there are absolutely wonderful people here. We are a little over 3 million people as a state.
Yep.
So we're smaller than a lot of really big cities out there, but we've avoided as a state a lot of the issues that a lot of larger places have had to confront. And at the same time, as we do approach challenges and opportunities in our state, I've been so gratified with how accessible this state is, and every part of it is, and also the amount of collaboration that happens here. And I mean between government, which is highly accessible and engaged, between business, with nonprofits, with the rest of the community. This state is special in that way. I think we're a bit more civil than some of the examples we see outside of our borders. I think we need to keep it that way. But that's allowed us to do things and solve problems and make a quality of life for folks that it's just a really great opportunity. So I'm definitely one who's come here and stayed here by choice. And I just have never looked back, and I'm very grateful, that I've had the opportunity to work and raise a family here.
That's fantastic, and not only are you grateful for that, but you personally and your family and the company are paying it forward. Ruan's involvement in the community is really unmatched and unrivaled over the course of many decades. Whether it's Community Foundation of Des Moines, the World Food Prize, so many other examples. Could you speak a little bit about how you view Ruan's role in the community, and why you and your team take such an active role in supporting local charities, community endeavors, and educational entities?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, I would go back to the start in that, our founder was always grateful to the state, to Des Moines, that the conditions existed here for him to do what he did, to grow a successful business, to create jobs, to start new businesses, to invest and grow in real estate. So there is always a gratitude and appreciation for what our community, what our state, the conditions that were present here. And as you mentioned, the World Food Prize, I mean, that was a key and significant part of where our founder, placed a lot of what he'd amassed and saved throughout his life. Is he did want to pay it forward. And actually he talked about remembering being hungry in those early days, not having enough to eat, probably sleeping in that tent in Chillicothe. And so the World Food Prize is something that, as he attained that success later in life, he said, I want to give a significant amount of my own wealth to combat hunger, not just here, but around the globe. So that's been a significant part. And honestly, the Ruan Foundation is where, most of all of his liquid assets went. And it also just kind of is an interesting example, because I think for him, the reward wasn't, we all need to earn money to support ourselves, to send our kids to college, to send them to trade school, to get them up on their feet. But beyond that, the reward for him, I believe, was always the work in the creation and the things that make us proud to do the kind of work that we do. And then when he looked back at kind of everything that had turned into from a savings standpoint, he really turned that over and said, I do want to pay it forward. So that's part of our legacy. It's part of the fabric of our company. And so there is some expectation there, and certainly there's a privilege to be able to be part of a company and a culture that has that view. And the Ruan family has been, incredibly supportive of the community and beyond. And our people are, I look at even in my time at Ruan, and maybe some of the events would be more top down driven from a community engagement standpoint. I see that really has come full circle, and the newer leaders, newer team members are driving United Way campaigns. We've got a great and continuing engagement with the World Food Prize. We have Founders Days in July to recognize and celebrate the founding of our company, and our people are out volunteering, donating in the community. So I think it ties into the same element of, we're all going to look back on a career and how do we want the impact that we've made, to fulfill us. And this is just a key part of it. And so that's something. It's really great, gratifying to see, all of our people, continue to take part in the community and give back. And it does very much tie to, our story from day one.
Well, Ben, you lead by example. Lead the culture set at the top, right? And you're the CEO of the organization, and you are so visible personally. I think about the things that you are personally involved in, not just in supporting, monetarily things, right? But donating your intellectual capital, quite literally, to some of really key organizations. Ours included the Iowa Business Council, but you mentioned the pandemic a couple of times. The governor appointed you to be the chair of her Economic Recovery Advisory Board that set forth a whole slew of policy recommendations. I think virtually every single one of them has either been enacted through law or through executive order. And I know personally, spent many, many hours on that 4 years ago. More recently, you've been named a co-chair of the region's Capital Crossroads initiative. So you are involved in things beyond industry, and you're running a multi-state, multinational, presumably, company. Why is this so important for you personally to spend your time on, to give back in really a public service sort of way?
Sure. Personally, you mentioned the governor's Economic Recovery Advisory Board. And you know that one well, because there was a few people that I was fortunate to pull in to work closely on that. And Joe, you were a great partner in doing that. Joel Anderson from the governor's office, Ryan Capps. We all spent a lot of time together planning that. But I will be honest with you, that's not work that I'd done before. We didn't really have much of a blueprint for it. We certainly didn't have a blueprint for responding to a pandemic. But what we did have back then was a whole lot of openness to looking at things differently, looking at challenges and opportunities differently, because we'd had to change many parts of our way of life almost overnight as the pandemic broke, and we all tried to figure out how to respond to it in a safe way. And so but the thing I would say is that was not something that we really had a manual for. And I would share that was a time of a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, but it was an honor to be asked. And I would say the governor assembled an excellent team. And so as much anxiety as I would say I had taking that role on, I'm glad I did it. For those who feel that anxiety when they see opportunity, I would just say if we've stopped growing and learning, it's time to start thinking about, retirement or a different career. And that's one where when you feel that pressure, it's usually because there's a chance to grow. So certainly that happened personally, and I certainly felt that, but there was a great team that came together. We had over 350 Iowans volunteer for that. So beyond the board of about 14 of us, there was an excellent group of folks who wanted to share, wanted to give ideas. And to your point, the results, sometimes those things can be done. I think there was efforts in other states that disbanded because, interestingly, they couldn't reach any consensus. And so this is another example of a state that brings government, business, the community together, nonprofits together to say, how do we attack? How do we solve? How do we improve? The state of our state. And so it was a great honor to be asked. It definitely, as you know, we put a lot of time into it. The results, as you've just shared, whether it was childcare, broadband, work-based learning, more efficient government, education, so much has come from that and gotten done. So I hope everyone who spent time and worked on that, I hope they take pride in what actually came of the effort. And so, I think whether it's that effort, Capital Crossroads, some of it gets back to spend time in these areas because we do want to continue to ensure that the conditions are right for economic success in Iowa. And by that, I mean every individual, the opportunity to learn, to have skills, to go be involved in the workforce, to have your own economic success that allows you and your own family to improve, to sustain, to live a healthy, happy life. So it's just that broader element of the things that existed that allowed this company to grow, and ensuring that those same elements exist as we go on, 90 plus years later, that the same elements are there for that economic opportunity to be present for everyone in Iowa, and hopefully a lot of new people who will join us and be a part of it.
It's fantastic, true definition of servant leadership, and we're so fortunate to have folks like you, in these roles that take on additional roles outside of your business world. So we're coming to the end here, Ben, and I want to take a little bit of time quickly to kind of buzz through a little lightning round for viewers who have seen this before, kind of know the drill. A little bit more personal in nature, but people are really interested in how really successful people and prominent people, go about how they structure their days. So let's start off with your ideal morning routine, if you're willing to share. What time do you wake up? I know you have young kids, so it's probably early. When do you get to the office? How do you structure your morning in a way that will lead to a successful day?
Yes. Okay. All right. I thought this was going pretty well until now, Joe, but I guess all bets are off. You're getting personal. I would say, everyone's going to have different stages of life, right? And I am in a stage of life now where we've got 2 grade school kids. And so I would say adaptability is a key part of that. And, we know that we've got many employees who are in the same boat. And you do see, as I've been here now, not quite 20 years, but you see all of us are going to move through these stages of life. And so you may need different things at different times in your career. Right. And right now for me, I travel a good bit. So any given day, there's a whole different routine if you're on the road and visiting customers or in different meetings versus when I'm at home. But when I'm at home, if I could, I try to be as routine as possible. And in this stage of life, I found that, and I've always kind of been an early riser. So it's not unusual that the clock says 4 something when the day starts. But there's a whole lot of free time and autonomy because there's just not a lot of meetings that get booked then, right? So yeah, exactly. So from 5 to 7, there's some mix of catching up on the business news, catching up on email, getting communications out, understanding what the day is going to be like, reading, exercise. I do think for people in every position, that's certainly leaders, the ability to stay healthy, to have energy. You need to be able to give that and be in good health to be an optimistic leader with a great, positive viewpoint for your employees. So between 5 and 7, it's some mix of those things: exercise, I've gotten involved with a great group of guys that from 5 to 7 in the morning twice a week if I'm in town, and one more time on the weekend. That's usually my social time and my exercise time. So I think most of my social life happens between 5 and 7 a.m. in the morning, which is probably not normal, but it is a time where there's just more freedom. Because usually when if I'm home from work, the kids are around, you want to spend time there. And then some of this all does go to, you do have to say, what are my priorities in life? Faith, family, my job, my career. And then how is my time going to follow that and demonstrate that those are the priorities? And so that tends to dictate kind of how my days look. Of course, those mornings usually do start with the night before, and I'm not up very late.
That's right.
So I do. I mean, all the studies and research on sleep these days, right? And of course, now I have a watch that is going to track with probably too much accuracy whether I've been sleeping well. And so I believe in that too. I mean, I think you've got to stay healthy and active to also be good in other facets of your life. And so that is an important part, and that's usually when that time is made, early in the morning.
So you've mentioned, you sort of just hit on this next question, but how do you stay informed on the news and topics, either specific to your industry or the community or personal interests? So we know you do that between 5 and 7, but what are how do you consume that? And what are you consuming? Wall Street Journal, Des Moines Register, Business Record, industry publications. How do you consume all that?
I'm a Wall Street Journal reader for sure. They have a good app. I rarely read the paper version anymore, but I definitely am a pretty active, avid digital reader. I'm a Squawk Box fan in the morning also. So if I'm exercising at home, that's usually always on. You hear from other CEOs there. That's a pretty balanced, business focused show. So I mean, those are some of the things that I'd probably be catching up on in the morning. More broadly, though, I'd say, our team communicates a lot. I learn a lot from the people around me. I certainly seek to, and we've got a team that, we do spend a good amount of time together, and it is, the ability to learn what's going on in our industry. American Trucking Associations, I spent my day Sunday in San Antonio at their meetings. And that's when, from a policy perspective, other industry peers and participants, competitors come together, to think about things like safety and emissions regulations and all those things in our industry. So I learn a whole lot there. And then honestly, and this is one of the interesting things that I really valued in our business, our customers. I mean, if we're this trusted extension of our customer, and I'm grateful to say we are viewed as that in many of our relationships, they share a lot with us, and I learn a whole lot from them. What's going on in your business? How's business going? Tell me about your strategy. What are some of the main strategic projects you're working this year? How do you think about culture? So all those things, it's just been really, it's one of was the unexpected surprises of moving to Ruan from other professional services roles, but was the amount of integration into our customers and the amount of interaction we have with them, and the role we play in their supply chain requires us to learn a whole lot about their business. So I just say those are certainly some of the ways that I try to continue to learn, continue to stay sharp on all the new things happening around us.
That's great. Okay, last question, and it's a two-parter. What book are you currently reading or have read that you'd recommend to others? And what are you currently watching or have watched recently that you recommend to others? If you watch anything other than Squawk Box.
Yes, well, you heard Squawk Box, so that's one that I'll try to pick up. And obviously, you don't have to dedicate much time to that. I think all of the streaming shows, I hit my lifetime quota probably at sometime in 2020 when none of us were able to do much else. First season of Ted Lasso, though, I think that was a bright spot in a lot of otherwise dark streaming content that happened during that time. But that was certainly a needed uplifting story and program for a while. Reading, our team, our chief operating officer has been excellent on doing kind of a book club series. So we're usually reading books on leadership as part of that. Some that I've read that I find impactful and meaningful, and one of them is from a long time ago and is Good to Great by Jim Collins. Really like his thinking and description of what level 5 leadership is. There's a lot about humility in that style of leadership, and probably a servant leadership feel to it. So that's one that I'd call out to folks. And then my team is going to roll their eyes when I say this, but Michael Porter. So I'm a student of business strategy, and he's, the most cited reference scholar related to business strategy. And we're in a really competitive industry. So there's a lot of his writings and articles that my team has the joy of getting assigned to them. And I still reference, a lot of his thinking and a lot of his writing. One of his colleagues, Joan McGreta, wrote a book called Understanding Michael Porter, which, if you want a short kind of intro to a lot of his work on strategy, that's one that I definitely recommend.
That's perfect. Ben, that concludes this BizCast episode. Thank you so much for your time. We went over than what we said, so thank you so much. Alicia, thank you so much as well for hanging with us on this. Ben, is there anything else you'd like to say as we part ways today?
Joe, I just say thanks for the work that you're doing. I mean, we're really proud of our association with the Iowa Business Council and the work that the council does across the state to make this a great place to live. And I just say, having business and operations and experience in a lot of other states, we've got great opportunity here. And we do have the conditions for a lot of growth, a lot of success for everybody, who's in Iowa now, and ideally who will join us into the future as our businesses continue to grow. We've got a government, we've got nonprofits, we've got business that work together and collaborate in ways that I don't think happen in other states. And we need to continue that. But as we do, it means opportunity for everyone. And we're just thrilled to be a part of it. 92 this year, hopeful to hit 100 in a few years here, and 90 years beyond then. But really, really proud to be part of Iowa and to be able to be engaged with the Iowa Business Council. So thanks for having me today.
Great. Well, thanks, Ben. Thanks for all you do for our council, for our community, and for our state. And thanks everybody for tuning in today. We really appreciate your time, and we will get this up and online shortly. So thanks all.